Good morning, everyone. It's the non-Black POC Caucus, which consists of me, Bandan, and Jason. And we're here today to talk about what freedom really means to us, right? Freedom means reclamation to us. And we're going to start off by talking about how we are reclaiming our clothes and our cultural identities through clothes. What I'm wearing right here this is like an Indian top, which is like a sari blouse, which is like a crop top. But this pants right here, these are Pakistani pants, and Pakistan is now a different country, but it used to be part of Punjab. And my mom and I picked this out, and it was supposed to be like a 2-piece set, but we ended up making a 3-piece because I got this when I was back in the Middle East, and to incorporate that culture and to be respectful, we got this like overall top thing. So, just incorporating all the different cultures. I wanted to find that up top outfit over there so that you can see that's called a fulkari dupatta, like the scarf that she has on. And it's just all handmade, beautifully made in Punjab. And this right here is my sister and I. The work that's done on here is called the Gota Patti, and that's specifically only done in Punjab. So when I learned about that, that was really cool that my parents actually made sure that I have a lot of that work with me. And my sister, you can see she's wearing like the Punjabi jutti. So hopefully I am hoping to find them here in America and try to incorporate those in my outfits. And you can also see she's wearing like a headpiece, which is called a tikka. So maybe I'll make that. And the last piece is like this beautiful lady in the farm, and she's got something attached to her hair. And that is called a paranda, and it just brings out the beauty in the hair. So that's one of the ways that we're reclaiming is through our clothes. And we don't usually wear our clothing outside of events or some cultural temple things. So this is us reclaiming, and I'm going to pass it over to Jason.
All right, thank you. So I'm also wearing a traditional piece of clothing. This is called a bahag. And it is a pre-colonial Ifugao tribe loincloth. And so this would actually be worn with a sash as well. This is usually made from hand-woven material, like I said, by the northern tribes in the Philippines. We actually have two other people who helped us out on the POC Caucus, Shane and Amira, and they actually joined us with our traditional clothes, and Shane is wearing a barong Tagalog. That's probably one of the more famous, well-known traditional Filipino shirts, and it's worn in formal events, made from piña or pineapple fibers. And and then Namira also is wearing traditional clothing as well. Yes. So the clothing was just one example of what we kind of landed on. Is one of the commonalities in our discussions that we had in this big overall greater discussion on what freedom is, because that was the assignment for the POC Caucus in our discussions. What does freedom mean to the POC Caucus? How do we define it? And so that was just one example that we wanted to start off with. But we were also given a task to go over a guiding document and then also a guided discussion that through that exchange of ideas with the guided discussion, then it brought up commonalities and thoughts on what freedom is. But the guiding document is kind of the overview of the presentation today. So 4 main points with the guiding document. We wanted to just go over the overview of the project. What are the intentions behind the project? How should people use this? And for whom this is a resource. And then, of course, we wanted to name the contributors, shout out everyone who helped us with this. So I'll take the first two. So the overview of the project, we really wanted to use information and our personal ancestry and cultural historical learnings from these assignments that we've done previously in the deal assignments in the previous months to really try to define what freedom means. And the intentions behind it, we wanted to draw on that ancestral strength and resilience. We know that we stand on the shoulders of the people who've done it before us, and hopefully would inspire resolve in us, but then also in people who view this project to push even further for freedom and build on what's been done. And then we will see a theme of just reclaiming. So we want to reclaim our stories and our narratives. And we'll talk about those areas where that theme came through. So Bandhan was going to take the other 2 points.
So how are we going to use this project, right? So if you have a spark of curiosity and you want to find more about your lineage, what was imposed on your ancestors and what was eventually lost by your ancestors, and to really find out how you can channel the ancestral power to instill more pride and confidence to continue doing all the change that we're doing. And if your lineage has been displaced or colonized, you can definitely take a look and read and relate and make your own sense of this guiding document. So before we move on, we definitely want to shout out to all the contributors. Apart from our caucus, we want to give a shout out to Namira and Shane, who have helped us whenever we needed them, and our beautiful ancestors who we channel all the time, and our entire deal cohort, along with the entire design team whenever we needed them. We appreciate you guys. And so how does our caucus really define freedom for ourselves? Now we're going to go over a lot of the questions, like the questions that we went over to really help us how we define freedom for ourselves was, finding out what cultural identity was lost in becoming white, what impact that had on our families, and based on the research that we did, what were the practices that we're using currently to fight back and be more resilient. And I'm going to pass it over to Jason.
So those were the main questions on the guided discussion. What was lost in becoming white, how it affected our family, and then what are some practices that we're using to show resilience or resistance to whiteness, as the question posed. And so the first thing that we exchanged ideas. And again, like I said, unprompted, we found that there were some things that we both connected with and mentioned about being, that we noticed being lost. And so the 3 things that we'll talk about being lost is a connection to land, gender equality, and a sense of self-beauty and appreciation of our own perception of ourselves. So the first thing we'll talk about that was lost is a connection to land. We talked about losing a connection to land spiritually, agriculturally, and environmentally. I think we talked about a couple months ago at a deal session how I found the previous, like pre-colonial notions of land. It involved animism, attributing a soul to land, to plants and animals, and that was lost in colonialism. So, but agriculture, the next slide goes over some examples of what we lost agriculturally. So you see, this is on the top left is a picture of mountains and forests and river in the Philippines, and Philippines used to practice what was called swidden agriculture or slash and burn agriculture. So they would cultivate areas of the land and then harvest the crops and then do a controlled burn and then allow that land to recover to its natural state. Forests were able to recover to its natural state and then to be used again later. And so we see some of those examples in these pictures. And then that's much different, of course, than, monoculture agriculture and really using the land, straining the land for one specific crop in different areas, which is much less sustainable and obviously not great environmentally. And Bandhan has some examples on this slide.
Yeah, so talking about the land, as we all know, like Punjab has deep agricultural roots. I've been talking about that a lot. And I hinted that, I've been doing a garden and stuff like that. So I've been getting back to it, but definitely want to highlight, like, over here, you can see that there are only older men pictured here because a lot of the younger people are actually leaving their home countries and trying to get a better life for themselves. So it's only a lot of the old people that are left doing all these practices. And, after 89 years of the British colonizing India, there are a lot of practices that are no longer used because a lot of the crops like indigo, cotton, and like high quality silk are no longer even, being made because of the commercialization. So another thing that was lost is like, as you can see, there were cows here in my photo and, Jason's photos. It's like there was so much sustainability happening that, we were using all parts of everything that was around us, that we even used like the cow's dung to kind of make cement and walls and floors and so much more. So really how to really do that is lost. So like all the practices and the methods that, was used was kind of like left behind. And, in the last photo, you can see that there's like a middle-aged man somewhere in some town trying to grow a little bit of whatever he can. So there's still hope. Like it's not just older people, and we're doing that. So that's definitely something that was lost. And so moving on to the next section was the gender equality. So after British colonizing India, a lot of the women were meant to go in the house and just kind of work and be in the kitchen, but that was not the case before that. Women were treated as like goddesses of the house, and like the so-called like Lakshmi was the word used of the house. And in the next slide, you can see like the first two photos are depictions of in a couple of years ago how women were depicted. Is like the first one, she's a warrior fighting off the evil guy, and the second one, she's a goddess floating on the lotus in the water and just being one with nature. And then the last two are actually from now depictions of young kids, of how they're seeing the goddesses being abused, and there's like no gender equality. It's there's a lot of down trauma that has happened in that. So I'm going to pass it over to Jason.
Yeah, the next slide. So the Philippines also pre-colonial times had very different gender roles. Again, I think we talked about this at previous session. Before colonialism, women were pretty much on the same level as men in various areas of society. So there was a political aspect of society and then also the spiritual aspect of society, and both were found or were felt to be equally important. And women were often high priestesses. And you see in the first two photos up there of high priestesses in pre-colonial times in the Philippines. They could also be chieftains of villages. They could engage in trade and just had say and agency over everything in many aspects of their life that was not the case after colonialism, and then the traditional gender roles that we know of now. And the bottom picture shows a female warrior as well. So they were able to do things outside of the usual stereotypical gender roles that we think of now. So the third thing that we both noticed and kind of mentioned in the discussion about being lost was pride and perception of self-beauty. I think we see this in many cultures and countries, the notion of colorism and the thought that lighter skin is always more desirable and darker skin is less desirable or attractive. We just have 3 slides here depicting that notion. These first 2 are from the Philippines. And so the caption is the caption is in Tagalog, and basically it's saying, you're the favorite of the boss because you have lighter skin. Isn't that unfair? And then it says, wag magalit mag glutamax, which means don't get mad, get glutamax. Glutamax is a product that is supposed to lighten the skin, lighten the complexion. So, the solution, like the mindset, the solution is to just lighten the skin as opposed to fix the structures that, lead to this discrimination. It's just inherent in post-colonial times. That mentality is kept. And this is the same product in the Philippines. So from ebony to ivory, Glutamax, and a similar product in India. I'll let London talk about this.
Yeah, this is the previous slide. I'm pretty sure the previous slide wasn't even the same person. But as you can see, like even the font that they've used, like this is before is like darker and the after is like pink. So, they have that, that's a commercialized company. Instead of like how Jason beautifully put it, instead of fixing it, they're just coming up with more products like powders and creams and soaps, and you can see this is like not edited at all. This is like a giant ad in like the middle of the street somewhere. So I grew up with people using this product. I grew up with people telling me that because I played soccer under the sun a lot, I was very tan at that time as a kid. So a lot of the people would come to my mom and tell my mom, oh my God, she's become so dark. Like, you need to make sure you put the face packs and you brighten her face, and she's not going to get a husband, and like weird things like that. So I think my parents, instead of, having other people come and say that to me, they started guarding me, and they started like, oh, you gotta fix it and stuff like that. Like to this day, in August, I was like arguing with my mom about that same thing. And Namira and I had a bunch of discussions about that as well, about like how our parents are like guarding us instead of actually telling us like, you're okay in your skin. So it has taken a lot to be comfortable in our own skin when everybody around you is doing all of this, right? So yeah. So moving on to the next question. What was the impact of loss on your family that, we spoke about? The agricultural methods that weren't passed on, but also like a different type of relationship to the outdoors, right? Like throughout this year, we've realized that our relationship with how we treat land and how we even look at it is changed so much. So we did not have that kind of relationship with land like our ancestors did. And in the end, we're not eating the same kind of food that they did. So our diets are much, much more poorer. We're always shopping at the mall and like buying all the snacks because they're great, but we're not actually going back to the organic methods. And I'm going to pass it on to Jason for the next slide.
Yeah, I think we both put images on this slide, just demonstrating that point. There is not a real connection with land in most Filipino families that I knew and grew up with. We didn't, go outdoors a lot or go hiking or camping. It was more about, these two pictures at the top are actually malls of Asia in the Philippines. There's several of them around. They're huge. So it's more about consumerism and not really a connection with land. And then it has also led to, just less healthy diets. So these are just pictures of processed foods there. So we're talking about the impact that the loss of these three things had on our family. So we talked about land, and then we're going to talk about gender equality loss, and then the perception of self-beauty and how that affected our family. For gender equality, I think we talked about in our discussions, there was definitely the more typical, submissive, subordinate role for women in our family. And that did show itself as with a lot of domestic violence in the household that I grew up in. And so it just made me, as we did research and I learned about more equal gender roles in pre-colonial times and in my ancestry, it just made me wonder, if we didn't lose that, would that mindset have been there, and would that have happened? And it probably would have made a great difference. I think you were taking this slide, right? Yeah.
I kind of went over this a little bit, right? So like my relationship with skin color was very complicated growing up. For me, everybody around me was just trying to be fair and stuff like that. So it was very complicated for me to wonder like, why am I like this or stuff like that. So it took a lot of work and it took a lot of fighting back with whoever was saying those things to me. And so yeah, so basically the perception of beauty was absolutely changed, right? Like to this day, I'm still fighting with my parents. So, there's a lot of discrimination, not just towards me, but also toward other people in my family, because my family is like kind of like multi skin colored. So, I can see like the kind of discrimination that happens towards my darker skin tone family members where like, oh, she might not find an ideal husband just because of her skin tone. It doesn't matter if she's a lawyer or an engineer or, who she really is. It always matters about what's your height and what's your looks and how your hair is and all of that, right? So really having that kind of outlook of what my family and how my grandparents wanted me to look like versus, how I'm being more comfortable in my own skin. And then clothing, like, all of the cultural clothes that we wear all the time is always, oh, we're only going to wear our clothes to where everybody else is wearing these clothes, right? Because we're comfortable being around people that look like us and wear clothes like us. So that kind of relationship with wearing my cultural clothes, I like the way Namira said it, Desi threads. I like wearing my Desi threads more like, I was used to wearing them just where everybody else wears it. So this is like my first time actually wearing it outside of a temple or anything else where nobody else is wearing it. So, that's kind of how it kind of affected my family with me. And then, so do I pass it over to you?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So based on our research, we found practices that we're resisting, and it goes back to like reclaiming, right? So kheti badi in my language means agriculture. So we're going back into our lands and we're getting a different type of relationship with what land means to us and how we are really using the access that we have, and being super grateful that we even have that little bit of access to the land. And then, self-love and cultural acceptance. And learning traditional folk music. I didn't really talk about that much, so I want to get into it a little bit. Like Punjabi cultural music is so romantic and it has so much of like freedom fighting stuff. Sikhs were known for fighting for the right thing at all times. It didn't matter like what your religion was, what your caste was, where you were from. Like we were always known to be the warriors. So there's a lot of like freedom fighting music, and it's fun and upbeat, and it's the instruments that are being used in there that are no longer used in music. Like the harmonium, the sarangi, and I actually had experience to use the chimta, which is like this all wooden made thing that makes an awesome sound. So just basically experiencing all of that is, what I am, is another way of me fighting back. And I'm going to pass it over to Jason.
Yeah, and so I had thought a lot about this as well, especially after the last deal assignment. I think I've talked, at least in smaller groups here, how in recent years, last 3 or 4 years, have changed a lot in terms of diet and just thoughts on land, relationship to land, sustainability, and also with animals, doing pet rescue and all of that. And I didn't really know about the historical context of that, or my ancestral context of that, before doing the research. So that is kind of in line with kind of how our ancestors were approaching things, and so it gives me kind of a new perception. I didn't think of those things as like cultural resilience practices before this, so I was happy to get an appreciation of that with the research. And I thought more about animism and says enhanced and already drifting that I've had for a while now, for years, from the religion I was raised in. So we're gonna wind things down. We'll just have a few more things, but we have a few slides. Another commonality that we had was gardens and this appreciation for land, and what we're trying to do in our own gardens. So I have a few pictures. So I cannot take credit for, I don't have the green thumb of the house, but that's my partner there, and he basically took up all the lawn, because lawn does not do anything for the environment or sustainability, doesn't do anything for ecosystems. So replace it totally with all native plants and native gardens. So it's actually designated as a wildlife habitat and a pollinator way station. And so those are the chrysalises in the bottom right. And a couple summers ago, we released a lot of monarchs, which are very endangered. So that's been fun. And then I tried to do some photos of some of the wildlife. So a lot of bees, different kinds of bees that I never really appreciated before, but that's one of them in the middle. And then a robin's nest, you see a koi there. So there's some wildlife as well. One thing I do wish I had was a vegetable garden, and so I'm jealous of Bundan, and these are her pictures. So
I mean, I hope that my garden is not just providing for me, but other habitat as well around me one day. So definitely want to get to that one day. This is my mini little garden. I've got the cherry tomatoes and cucumbers, and I whipped up a little salad, which is missing yogurt. So it's kind of like a traditional Indian salad with cucumbers, tomatoes, and a bunch of Indian herbs. And a couple of months ago, I was talking about the radishes, and they finally bloom. There's a small little flower. I don't know if you can see it, but it means a lot to me that, I get to have radishes. And actually, it's called mooli in my language. So I made mooli di roti from those baby radishes. And the last one is, I waited months, but that potato just wouldn't grow any bigger. And it's on my palm. It's like the tiniest potato ever. But got me a lot of patience, and my kitten just ended up playing with it like a toy. So everybody had fun with it. So back to freedom. How does Caucus really define freedom for ourselves? Freedom means reclamation, right? We're reclaiming everything. We're reclaiming how we appreciate the land and respect the land. We're reclaiming what spirituality means. We're reclaiming equality for all genders. We're reclaiming how we love our skin and how we view ourselves. And we're reclaiming our stories and our own narratives. So the next slide is, I'm going to pass it over to Jason.
All right. So like I said, we're winding down. We just have actually a little giveaway, a quick mention of a project that we came up with, and then we close out with a short video on Grace Lee Boggs. But with all this talk about land and, reclaiming land, getting back connected with sustainability and everything, we wanted to give everyone a sapling. And so this is a native spruce. And so it has different advantages. And so it definitely supports a diverse ecosystem. Their nesting sites, their food sources, and shelter for animals. And of course, they sequester CO2 and helps avoid storm water runoff. Also has some medicinal uses. So we have one of these. And I don't have the instructions for planting, but I will email them because it was very a little bit detailed. So to help them kind of last, and then until you can plant them in land. So we have that. And then, so I'll hand this off to Bundan, but all the talk about fabrics and with clothes, it's a little bit of a tangent, but it made us think about different fabrics from our ancestors and cultures. So we thought about this group project. I'll let Bundan talk about it.
So we're proposing a group project that after our deal fellowship is over, that we all meet up like once a month for a couple of months and kind of come together and bring our own legacies and put it into a quilt. And, it has to be a no sew method or sew method, whatever you prefer. I know it can be a little overwhelming sometimes with the needle and stuff. So we're going to be using irons and transferring stuff over. So because we're using the iron, we can, if you don't have access to fabric, which I understand. You can also bring a photo of the pattern or a photo of somebody, whatever. We're going to roll with everything, bring all of our artistic expressions to the table. So yeah, we just wanted to propose that, and hopefully, we all try to make it and do something about it and continue having this community beyond and have a reason to meet up and be accountable for growing together. Okay, and we have a video prepared for everybody to wrap this up. I'm going to pass it over to Jason to speak a little bit before we present.
I was just going to get straight into the video, and we'll close out with Grace Lee Boggs. I think this is the longer one. We're going to do the shorter version. All right.
I was born in 1915 above my father's Chinese restaurant. And I knew very early that changes were needed in this world because the waiters in the restaurant used to say when I cried, "Leave her on the hillside to die, she's only a girl baby." And I've become a movement activist until I was in my mid-20s. I was working for $10 a week in the philosophy library at the University of Chicago. Because in those days, even department stores would come right out and say, "We don't hire Orientals." That led me to involvement in the March on Washington movement led by A. Philip Randolph, which was mobilizing tens of thousands of African Americans to march on Washington to demand of jobs in the defense plants, and has been a wonderful life, recognizing how important it is to maintain a vision of the future and to have an idea of revolution that is not so much seizure of power, but changing ourselves to become the change that we want to see in the world.
I think whites understand the degree to which Negroes do not want their whiteness.
I became so active in the Black Power movement that FBI records at that time say that I was probably Afro-Chinese.
You don't choose the times you live in, but you do choose who you want to be, and you do choose how you want to think.
See hope beginning to trump despair.
Where do you see the signs of it?
I see the signs in the various small groups that are emerging all over the place to try and regain our humanity in very practical ways. For example, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Will Allen, who is a former basketball player, has purchased a 2.5-acre land with 5 greenhouses on it, and he is beginning to grow food, healthy food, for his community. And communities are growing up around that idea. I mean, that's a huge change in the way that we think of the city. I mean, the things that we have to restore are so elemental. Not just food, and not just healthy food, but a different way of relating to time and history and to the earth.
And a garden does that for you?
Yes. A garden does all sorts of things. It helps young people to relate to the earth in a different way. It helps them to relate to their old elders in a different way. It helps them to think of time in a different way.
How so?
Well, if you just press a button and you think that's the key to reality, you're in a hell of a mess as a human being. And helping to bring together small groups who are making this cultural revolution that we so urgently need in our country. And I see this as part of a pilgrimage which human beings have been embarked on for thousands and tens of thousands of years. To rethink the concept of leader, because leader implies follower. And so many, not so many, but I think we need to appropriate, embrace the idea that we are the leaders we've been looking for.
Grace Lee Boggs, thank you very much.
Before you all hand those out, we have you stand in front and so that I can take a picture. I love it.